Hey everybody. I have a brief moment where I am aware up here to be able to try and teach this lesson. The variables are one of the most important things in programming. They're probably the hardest to understand. So I'm not going to be terribly upset or disappointed if you don't get this while I'm not here. I'm going to try my best to explain it. Presumably, if you're watching this video, you're already on the assignment, which is called Controlling Memory with Variables. Last year, when I talked about RAM, which is random access memory, which is that stick, it has individual little chips inside of it, and you're allowed to reserve a spot in that temporary short-term memory to be able to hold valuable information. You'll see this in situations where you can store things like your name or a password or even in like a calculator to put in a number and to add another number to that original number. It had to store your initial number. Now in Scratch, we did a little bit of variables when we did dynamic programming with polygons, where the Scratch cat asked, yo dude, how many sides do you want? And we took the answer from us, which in this case I'm going to use the number 3. And then we took that answer and then we could repeat it the number of times whatever our answer was. And then we could take the degrees, which was 360, and we could divide it by our answer, which would give us our angle that we needed. And we were able to quickly be able to create a triangle, a square, hexagon, pentagon. Of course, we couldn't do the 5-pointed star because that was a unique one, but we could easily do that with our octagon and our hexagon. And I think that even went up to the decagon, we could do it. And how we did that was we stored whatever the answer was from our user. In your case, I was your user because I was the one grading it. But I'm so sorry, I'm so sick. I have a pretty bad temperature, so I'm trying really hard to try to get my point across. Anyway, so we're going to be doing the same thing, only in this particular programming we have to declare that we're using a variable with the keyword var. You only use var one time when declaring a new variable. Now, you can give that variable a name, kind of like we each have value in us. You have a name, and with that name is associated a value of age. So if I were to call and want to know the age of every single one of you and I were to call you by name, you would return back your age. It's along that same lines. I'm trying really hard to be coherent, so please bear with me. This is probably the most clear I've been all day. So with controlling memory with variables, we want to remix that code. And as you can see with the variables toolbox, it says, let's get started with the most basic example of using and controlling the computer's memory with variables. The toolbox has a couple of new commands for working with variables. We've given you some starter code that does 3 things. 1, it creates a variable called score. And you can see that on there by that keyword var score. We're like, hey, we're going to reserve a spot in memory. We're going to call it score so that we can call upon it. The next line of code says that score has the value of 0 currently. So we set it with an initial value of 0. We want to add to it eventually. But at this particular time, we're just going to give it the value of 0. Just like with any other game, you never start off with, yay, I have 1,000,000 points. You start off with 0, and you slowly work your way up. Now, the console.log allows you, which is your default that you've been using up until this point, whenever you have your button and you go to your events and you click and insert code, it gives you a console.log. Console.log is mainly used so that we can debug or we can find out how the computer is reading how we're talking to it. Now, the computer doesn't care about talking to us, mind you. We have to find a way to talk to it. So we console.log within quotes the value of score is something. Now remember that computers were designed to do math. They're addicted to it, so to say. So if you don't put something in quotes, it's going to try and math it. And I don't know how you can math the value of score. So make sure that you have anything that you don't want to use math always in quotations. Now you can see our next line does not have quotation marks because we're calling upon a name of score, which actually has the value of 0, which is a number. And it doesn't care that it can't really math a 0 because 0 in and of itself is mathable. It likes that number. It likes the fact that it can do math. So when you're calling upon a variable, you just call it by its name, and it's really just looking at the value that's in it, the value that's held in it. Just like me, I'm Mrs. Story. The value that's held in me is 41. If you were to call upon me, I could always give you that answer of 41 until, of course, next year when I'm 42. So for right now, what you want to do is you're going to hit remix on this code, and then you want to add a new variable, and it's under the purple toolbox. So you'll go into variables, you're going to drag over your var x, and they keep x from the same premise that they did in algebra, x being a variable, and it's no different, only we give it a better name. And technically in algebra you don't have to use x or y. You could give it any name you wanted, just like what you've seen, that x has a value of 3, and you plug it into some equation, you can do math, but it doesn't have to be x. It could be any name you wanted to. So in programming, we utilize that a little bit better because we want names that we can understand and we can reference. And in this particular case, with our chaser game that we've created, our banana game, we want to score because we want to have a winning situation. We already had a losing situation, but we got to start programming towards our winning. In this particular case, we want to have a high score, and we want to have some form of lives. Lives usually we get by default by 3 by any video games. So we're going to bring over a new variable. You're going to rename it from x to call it lives. And then you want to, on your next line, assign lives the value of 3. Now please remember, you only use var once when assigning a new variable. That's kind of like the key word of, hey, I'm creating a new variable and we're giving it this cool name. If you use var more than once, it confuses the memory and reassigns it a new variable with a new name and erases the previous one. So you never want to use var more than once for the same name. You can give it a different name, especially if it has a different use. Capitalize it, put in all sorts of fun stuff. So try to remix that code, add a new variable called lives, assign it the value of 3, and run for your console.log. And if you look down at below, it says that the output in the debug console should look like this. It should say the value of score is 0 and the value of lives is 3. So you're going to have to drag over a new variable, call it lives, drag over the assigning portion for it, so it says that lives has the value of 3, and then you want to do your console.log message, and remember, when referencing variables, you never use quotes. This should keep you busy. Hopefully I'll be in tomorrow, and be nice to the sub. Remember, there's donuts to the most well-behaved class, so please be behaving and be the best versions of yourselves. I miss you terribly. Hopefully I'll be in tomorrow. I'm trying really hard to get better. Have a good night.